but could you tell us about what types of pronouns you use and what types of pronouns other people use?
Well, I am they, them, so that reflects that I'm neither male nor female. A lot of non-binary people use they, them. Obviously, if you transition from male to female or female to male, then you'll use the pronouns that you transition to generally, although some trans people use they, them as well. And it really is up to the individual. I think identity is the identity a person has is their identity. It's not there being someone else. How you identify is your identity, and that's really important to remember. A lot of people get stuck with they, them and think that those are plural pronouns only. And I often say to people, well, if you imagine you see someone like a kid playing outside, you say, what are they doing? So that's a singular they that you're using, and that gets used all the time. And yet people get hung up on it and say, oh no, that's a plural, but it actually isn't. Even in usual usage, it can be a singular pronoun. Some people make it about them and say, oh, I can't do that, that's too difficult. I'm old. I'm old. I'm too old to get my head around this. And you just think, well, if you take it away from being about that person to being about the person whose pronouns that it is, which is the key, then that needs to change, because it's not actually very helpful. And it's most people who have they, them pronouns are going to be pretty unimpressed if someone says, oh, it's too hard for me to do that, because it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to that person, and that person is the important thing, and that this stuff goes really deep. This is people's deep held views and who they are. And if you invalidate that, that's actually damaging to their mental health. And the suicide rate for trans and gender diverse people is very high. And so being respectful and supportive of people as much as you can is a very good idea, and it's a much nicer thing to do, and it's a lot safer for people to, if you feel respected and included, then that helps with your mental health. So it's really important that it's not about the person who's using the pronouns, it's the person whose pronouns they are.
And so if you knew somebody that told you that they were coming out as non-binary, what's the best way to support that person?
Ask, is there anything you need from me? Be respectful, and it's called misgendering when you use the wrong pronouns, and it happens. You know what? The biggest culprit for misgendering me for about 3 months after I came out was me. I'd been my old name and not identified as non-binary for 43 years. So I made lots of mistakes. It's actually okay to make mistakes, but you need to apologise and acknowledge the mistakes. And that's a really important thing. And to make the effort is really important. But to ask what that person needs and to listen and be respectful, and not ask probing personal questions. One thing that trans people particularly experience is people asking them really personal probing questions, and it's not okay. And I always say, if you wouldn't ask it of your mum or your auntie, don't ask it of anyone, because it's not okay to ask people those questions. That's really disrespectful.
Just so I'm clear, is non-binary and trans, they're not the same thing, but how are they connected? Are trans people non-binary?
Generally, so the trans flag, I've got one on my wall. It's blue, pink, and a little white line in the middle, and then blue, pink again, or pink, blue again, I should say. And so non-binary is part of gender diversity, which trans is as well. So gender diversity is the umbrella, and within it there's non-binary and transgender. But some transgender people also identify as non-binary. So it's one of those things where there is some complexity, but it's like an umbrella term under which there are a number of different identities. There's things like gender fluid, Neutra. I'm trying to think of some, and they've all dropped out of my brain now. I'm on the subject.
Agenda.
There are lots of different non-binary identities and trans identities, and yeah, you can belong to a few different ones.
You talked about how when you came out as non-binary, you kind of figured out who your friends were, but also did you meet a new community of people?
Yes.
And how has that been for you?
It's been really lovely. It's like meeting autistic people when you find out you're autistic. You know, you find your group, you find your club, and it's just lovely. And you feel accepted in a way that you haven't felt accepted before, and you can have a sense of inclusion and being part of a group, which is lovely. And to know that there are groups out there of similar people and people with like-minded views is just beautiful. It's really nice.